deciding to spend your evening differently and come and joining us to learn more about Peru. So I had this idea of, now that we can't actually physically travel, would be wonderful to perhaps travel in our mind and in our heart and see different places that we can't physically be there right now, and learn all about their culture and what they have to offer. So without any further ado, we are going to get started. So this is the first virtual travel series that I decided to create. And the first one, obviously, tonight is going to be a Peru, but there are going to be more of the virtual travel series in the coming weeks as well. I guess we are going to be in this situation for quite some time, so we'll see how that goes. This is a partnership between myself, Leila Levy, and my company is Travel Design by Leila Levy. And we're going to introduce Linda in a second as well. But for those of you who don't know me that well, I have a boutique travel concierge business, and I focus on building personalized experiences for my clients. I'm fairly a new entrepreneur. I started my business about 2 years ago. My background is engineering and analytics and technology. And the reason that I created my business was what I realized, that it was a big, huge gap in the space of people who are looking for experiences and not particularly interested in the packages and in the tour companies, and they wanted something fully customized for them, and it was too much of time and not having that expertise to do that. So that's how I created my business. Next slide, I wanted all of you to introduce Linda Kana. Linda.
Hi. Well, first of all, I'm thrilled to be joining you as well. Can you hear that echo, Leila?
I think we're good. We're good.
Okay. And I've been in this great industry for, I hate to say 40 years because I'm only 25, but I've been doing customized tours around the world, adventure travel as well as many other different types of travel. And I've opened up Women of the World. It's a division of Tour Can Vacations, which is a proud partner of Leila's parent company, the Travel Agent Next Door, also serving Canadian travel agents in luxury boutique customized travel for 34 years. So we've decided that tonight we would put our brains together and talk to you about a destination we both know very well, and upcoming tours that you'd have an opportunity to join us on, and answer any questions you have on this super spot of Peru. So,
Excellent.
back to you, Leila.
So the first slide, I wanted to talk to you about why Peru should be on your bucket list. So first of all, it's fairly accessible from North America. It's just a direct flight, especially from Toronto. So it's really easily accessed to Lima, which is the main gateway for Peru. It has lots of cultural and heritage experiences that you could benefit from. Lima, particularly, is a culinary capital of the world, and we're going to touch on some of our slides because food has been really coming up and popping out in Lima and Peru, particularly a lot. And a lot of Peruvian restaurants in Toronto, fusion Peruvian restaurants, are opening up. Obviously, Machu Picchu and the Amazon experience is something that you can have in Peru. So it's a destination that has all the pieces that you probably are interested, which is Machu Picchu, hiking, Amazon, exquisite beaches, and there is a new luxury sleeper train that is in Peru as well. It's the home to Nazca lines, which we're going to talk about it in our slides. It's been a fantastic spot for retreats and wellness, especially in the Sacred Valley, which Linda will talk about in some of our slides as well. From a wonderful wildlife experiences that you can see all these amazing animals, and it's a diverse cultural and geographical aspect of Peru makes it really unique and interesting. Let me make sure that can you all see my screen? Let me go back again. So I stopped my screen. I'm gonna present it one more time. You should all be able to see it, right? Okay. So moving on to Peru, one of the depends on, so Peru is actually one of the countries that, depending on how much time you have and how much time you wanted to allocate, the itineraries would be very, very different. So we first want to talk to you about one of the fairly popular routes, which is Lima, all the way to Cusco, few days in Sacred Valley, Machu Picchu, Cusco back again, and flying out of Lima. So this is fairly 8, 10 days itinerary that a lot of people that they don't want to spend more time in Peru, they take on. So Linda will be talking about Lima and some of the main characteristics of Lima and why it's important.
Thank you very much, Leila. And yes, as Leila said, Peru is certainly a diverse country. Lima is a spectacular city. Because of its situation, it's in the coastal desert part of Peru. And this means that it's a very dry area. It gets very little rain, but it's always kind of a cloudy climate, but a very temperate climate. A lot of people don't know this, but Lima is one of the culinary capitals of the world, right up there with New York, with Tokyo, with London. And the cuisine in Lima is second to none. So, foodies, you will certainly have a chance to explore some really unique experiences on your trip into Lima. Another part of Lima that I always spend time talking about is the Larco Museum. The Larco Museum is like a huge hacienda, privately owned, that's missed from many tours because you go right by it. It's famous for its collection of Inca and pre-Inca artifacts, as well as its gold collection of Inca gold, which is really a must-see. And for those of you that are interested, the famous erotic art displays. But one of the things that makes the Larco Museum a must-see when you're in Lima is the huge collection of archives, the largest collection of archives for pre-Inca and Inca um, uh, displays in the world that you can visit and see. And this is one of the rooms. There are many, many rooms. So, I mean, some of you have been to Peru and you might have never known this, but this is one of the things that I like to always point out is it's a must-see. And then as you're in Lima, another site, Lima, the beautiful square of Lima is the palace where you can see the guards and the changing of the guard. And then the famous the Basilica of St. Francis. Yeah, the Basilica of St. Francis is a huge church, and it's quite impressive. As you wander through this church, it's impressive because you're seeing the Catholic paintings and art infused, and they're touched still with the pre-Inca touches of when the Incas built these churches after the Spanish Inquisition. What's famous about this cathedral is the underground catacombs. Now, in the times after the Spanish Inquisition, when the Catholic churches were built, all the dead were buried under the churches for a sign of being sacred. But the catacombs of the St. Francis Basilica are a must see. It's very important that you go on a tour that's going to see you get tickets. You just can't go in and get tickets to these catacombs. They're very they're closed on certain days, and you have to book them in advance because the number of tourists are really limited. But it's really something you have to see. And here's just an example of walking through the catacombs. It's really something. And then in Lima, inside the church.
Should I go back?
Yeah, is there any way I can flip the slides or, oh yeah, just, this is inside some of the famous artwork of all the cathedrals in Peru. You can see they're telling stories, and they're always infused with, when the Incas were slaves, they built these cathedrals, and they're always infused with little pieces that show the life string of the Inca life, which is the condor above, the jaguar, which is a present life, and the snake, which is the below life. So the paintings are something you have to see. And the next slide is a picture of the Parliament buildings and the Palace of Lima, which is spectacular to witness the changing of the guards. And always a temperate climate, which it's a city that really is worthwhile spending a couple days. What I also recommend, because Lima is situated in the famous coastal desert area, about an hour and a half south of Lima is the famous Pachacamac ruins. Pachacamac is where the people would come, the Incas would come for an oracle to meet with the sun god. And the museum, the actual temple of the sun god, is in pretty good shape because it is so dry. This is a massive complex where you can see pre-Inca roads and walk around, and just you feel like you're really part of, it's a real spiritual connection when you visit the Pachacamac ruins. And then next slide. We have a lot to cover, so I'll be as brief as possible, but nothing can really match the experience of your own stories. A lot of people don't realize that Peru is known for the Paseo horse. Paseo horse is a very unique horse. It's compact, gentle, and has a 5-gaited pace. And for those of you that know horses, it's similar to the Icelandic horse, but it's really something to see a Paseo horse show. The art of man and horse together to music is something that I have to say, it'll reside with you forever. And all of the tours that we take our guests on include a private tour to a hacienda where you'll see this horse show and enjoy a delicious lunch with pisco sours as you're watching the song and dance, an exquisite horsemanship between man and horse, and woman and horse, as a matter of fact. And then the ladies come out and dance, and it's really something. And afterwards, all of our guests get a chance to ride these gentle animals themselves. So it's really something that's will make a lot of memories.
And Linda, a lot of people actually miss this experience.
Yes, you can't go to one of these shows unless you're part of a small group and you have a connection. When you go into these haciendas, you think you're in the middle of nowhere, and then they're private places that train these horses and put on shows for small groups, and it has to be arranged in advance, and it's just for you. So that's what makes it so unique. And thanks, Layla. Another thing a lot of people miss out in seeing is, as I mentioned, it's a culinary capital of the world, but Lima is unique because some of the fine restaurants are located next to ancient Inca ruins that are preserved. And this is one of the pictures of where we take our guests for their dinner in Lima before leaving. This is the final night that they're in Lima before heading to Cusco in the Sacred Valley. And it's really something to be sitting here enjoying world-class cuisine, drinking your wine, looking at these ancient ruins, and just feeling I'm really here, something very unique. And I'm not a professional photographer by any means, but I certainly try, and this is one of my pictures, and I'm very proud of it because I always said I'm never going to be one of those foodie people, and after coming back from Lima, I think I changed my mind. The food is so great, it's just, you got to get out your pictures and post on Instagram.
And one of the things I forgot to mention, so all of the pictures that you see here in this presentation is either Linda's or myself from traveling to Peru. So it's all I don't want to call it amateurs, but maybe that's our experience that we're sharing with you.
Yes.
And this is actually from my past trip to Peru, as you can see. So by the water, there's amazing restaurants that you can actually have pisco sour, which is the popular drink in Peru, and it's amazing. And you've got amazing scenery, and it's delicious as well.
And just for those of you that have never heard of a pisco sour, it's made of simple syrup, it's made of egg whites, and it's made egg whites, the Augusto bitters, and what's the main? I think it's and vodka. Yes. So a pisco sour is something that they're delicious. For those of you watching your weight line, they're not even that fattening. Well, maybe the simple sugar, but they're definitely worth having. And if we weren't in the situation that we're in now, we were planning on having this live with pisco sours at a Peruvian restaurant for all of you. And that maybe will come in the future. But it's a wonderful experience in Lima. And before we move away from Lima, I also want to mention the Miraflores area, which is where all of our tourists stay. It's right on the Pacific Ocean. It's like the Yorkdale or Rodeo Drive of LA. Very trendy, artsy, boutique safe part of Lima, which is where all of our tourists stay. You can walk everywhere, including the ocean around there. So Leila, do you want me?
Yeah. So
Okay.
briefly, so after Lima, Linda, do you want to speak about this part about the travel to Cusco?
Yes, after you leave, after our time in Lima, which is 3 nights, the other thing I want to talk about is flight times from Toronto, and actually from all over Canada, if any of you are joining from anywhere else. We recommend you go on Air Canada from Toronto to Lima on the direct flight. The direct flight, the timings really doesn't matter, but if you're coming from Canada, the best connections are via Toronto on the direct flight. And the flights arrive around midnight, and if they're on time, it's Air Canada Rouge. It's about an 8-hour flight, and then from there, sometimes they're late and you're arriving at 1 or 2 in the morning. So all of our tours arrange to have you picked up at the airport, baggage transferred to your hotel. We pre-book that night before, like the night you leave Canada, to make sure you have a room ready for you and you're able to start your day fresh the next morning. When we're finished our day's time in Lima, you fly on to Cusco. Now, Cusco is a charming Andes village that is like really no other place in the world. The only thing you have to keep in mind with Cusco, next slide, is it's high altitude. You're just under 14,000 feet, and you have to be careful to acclimatize, especially, and Leila will talk about this later, if you're planning to hike the Inca Trail. So all of our hotels do have oxygen, but when you arrive in Cusco, we recommend you drink and eat coca leaves and drink coca tea. And ladies, you can eat all the carbs you want because eating carbs is actually good for high altitude. We recommend you rest at least 24 hours before doing any type of hiking or any type of exertion. And immediately upon entering this high altitude, you're going to feel a little. Going up a set of stairs, if you're fit, will seem like a huge task. You'll feel a little dull headache. And if you ever feel any more than that, we have oxygen. You take a tank, and then you're good to go. But because of this, the flight from Lima to Cusco is just under an hour. But when you arrive in Cusco, to help you with the altitude sickness, we whisk you from Lima right down into the Sacred Valley. But before this tour, this slide right here is kind of out of sequence with the the way our tours work. But this is the most famous ruins of Lima is not Machu Picchu. It's really Sexy Woman, which you can remember by thinking sexy woman. And these are the ruins outside of Cusco, the huge rocks, and just how the Inca could have prepared such a great city. The problem with Sexy Woman is it was destroyed with the Spanish Inquisition, whereas Machu Picchu, because it was so hidden, it's not as grand a city, but it was preserved more. So you certainly don't want to be hiking around these huge rocks of Sexy Woman, and this is Leila's picture right here, until you've had at least 24 hours to acclimatize yourself. Look at those rocks. As I mentioned, from when you arrive into Cusco, we immediately take you through the Sacred Valley, and safety is a most important component of all of the tours that Leila puts together and the partners that she chooses. And see these twisty roads, you certainly want to know that you're going with a good company because they are really hair raising. You want a good driver, a good solid vehicle, and something that all you girls have to do is sit back and enjoy. Our last ladies only tour that went out this fall, we actually stopped on one of these hairpin turns and we all got out and we sang The Sound of Music. It reminds me of what the Italians were doing, breaking into song a week ago. This is a unique town, a very important town in the Sacred Valley called Ollantaytambo, which is where the living waters flow through this town. It doesn't matter where in the cobblestone town you go, you can hear the water streams trickling through. And this is also the fortress which you can hike up. And at the very top is the famous Temple of the Sun, another Temple of the Sun, because the Incas were so much, they worshiped the sun. Their mathematical skills were so precise as well. In the Sacred Valley, we take you to a really heartwarming experience. The people and the culture is such a part of Peru, and these Andes people, they prepare a lunch for you high in the Incas, and they teach you the tribute to Mother Earth, how they thank the mountains, and how they're so in touch with nature. And then they prepare a scrumptious organic lunch for you to eat. And it's something that will touch your heart, and you can see the different ladies, their colorful skirts and their hats really define the village they're from and where they, who they are. So the dress is very important. And just the warmth that they give to us when we have a small prepared lunch, it's really, really something. A delicious food. Another ancient art in the Sacred Valley is the weaving, and Chinchero is a not-for-profit organization of women that has kept the ancient art of the chinchilla weaving alive. And we take you right into the village and show you how through sustainable tourism, these women have existence, and they'll weave for you. You'll see right from the sheep being sheared, like how we wear all these clothes, but what happens from when the sheep is sheared to when the sweater's on your shoulders, and that's really something to see. Very colorful, very heartwarming. And just a little bit about the greatness of the Incas is the Moray terraces. Now the Moray terraces, the Incas were so smart that when they were high in the Sacred Valley, which is about it's 2,000 feet lower than Cusco, they realized that if they dug deep through these terraces, they could actually go down 300 feet, and the temperature was warm enough to grow different foods like corn and barley and stuff like that couldn't grow at the higher altitude. So that's something worth seeing, to see how this great agricultural feat. And again, in the Sacred Valley is the Mara salt flats. These are how these farmers mine the salt and use it. We actually hike. What we do is we don't just take you to an overhanging cliff at the other side and so you can snap a picture. We take you right to these Mara salt flats, and you walk those skinny little trails through the pools and learn how the salt is mined. It's really something. And if you're scared, don't worry. We hold your hand every step of the way. So something that's great. Going inside a local Peruvian Andes home is something that our ladies love. to see how they have guinea pigs running around on the dirt floors and how they're living a prosperous life the way they would have lived 300-400 years ago, knitting and sewing and eating guinea pigs. I know we love guinea pigs and I won't eat one, but it is a delicacy in the Andes and you can see them running around the floors. So something that's really neat. And of course, the beautiful llamas along everywhere you go, the ladies. From the Sacred Valley, you go back up to in Ollantaytambo, you board the train. And to go into Machu Picchu, it's very unique. This is a view of Machu Picchu from the very top, and the big peak that you see facing it, the famous peak, is really Huayna Picchu. And for adventure women or hikers, if you're interested, you can hike to the top of Huayna Picchu. And some of the history of Machu Picchu, from the very top of Huayna Picchu, when you look over Machu Picchu from the very top, if you survived climbing it, I did it once. And I will do it again if I have any ladies interested. But let me tell you, you better be in shape to hike up this Huayna Picchu. It is terrifying. And Machu Picchu is shaped like a perfect condor. And I mentioned about the Incas, the condors, the jaguars, and the snakes. So that's really something to see. And I'll just get into the next slide. Machu Picchu. Getting into Machu Picchu from Cusco, you would board the Peru Rail, which is really the Belmont Vista train. It's a wonderful experience because this train goes right along the Urubamba River, right up into the tiny town of Agua Calientes, which means hot water. And the Vista Dome has these lovely windows. So as you're going through, you're enjoying your snacks and your drinks. And these are some of the ladies, and you're seeing the glaciers, and you're seeing the river, and you're seeing the bridge where the Inca Trail starts, and it's just fantastic. And then coming back to Peru after your visit in Machu Picchu, we will actually give you a fashion show on board the train. So it's important to get onto that train. And when you arrive, to get to Machu Picchu, you pack an overnight bag because you spend one night in Agua Calientes, which is a small little hiker's town. And we stay in a very safe, trendy, I would say it's a 4-star hotel. It's not a 5-star because there are no 5-star hotels right in Agua Calientes. You can go and stay at a 5-star one outside of the town, but we like this little town because where you're staying at the El Mapi Hotel, you're actually able to walk to the famous Agua Calientes, which in English means hot water, and the natural hot water springs. That's something that is just lovely to do after your hike or after your visit to Machu Picchu. Now, from Agua Calientes, the next day, you will board little mini buses. And these mini buses take you up to Machu Picchu. Now, for those of you that don't know the Machu Picchu, and I don't want to get into too much history here, but it's really important that you go with someone like Leila's Tours that can get you the permits because they only take so many people per day, and one pass. You can't go into Machu Picchu for a full day like you used to. Your ticket will either enable you to go in the morning or in the afternoon. And there's only one hotel at the top of Machu Picchu, and that's the famous Belmont Hotel. It's an absolutely gorgeous place, and we see that our guests have a scrumptious lunch before going into the park for the 4-hour tour. And that is some of the views that you will get. And again, it's so important to have a guide when you go through the Machu Picchu. Otherwise, you'll miss the history, and that's part of the experience.
Linda, did you mention about the hotel, the 5-star hotel on the top, and
Yes, well,
the
that's the
washroom
Belmont Hotel.
situation?
Yes, thank you. I was going to. So, ladies, one of the things that you don't find anywhere in Wikipedia or on the internet is for some strange reason, there are absolutely no outhouses or bathroom facilities inside the gates to Machu Picchu. And your average tour is 4 hours. So what we recommend is after you eat your scrumptious lunch, You don't drink too much water because you're going to have to hold it for 4 hours. There are no, I wrote to the Peruvian government asking them to put some washrooms in, but they haven't answered me yet. Who knows? Maybe one day they will. But I don't know why. But the washrooms are outside of the state park. And because there's so many tourists, they won't even let you exit the park to use a washroom and then go back into the park again. So keep that in mind. We brief you on all of that. A good point. Next slide. I don't know about you ladies, but I'm sure all of you, more and more of our tours through Tourcan Vacations before we launched Women of the World, and what Leila and I believe in is sustainable tourism. We have a sister company, a not-for-profit that we set up a few years ago called Enriching Lives. And Enriching Lives enables us to go into community schools and hospitals that we set up ourselves that really need help. And through sustainable tourism and no pressure at any of our guests' side, we bring our groups to these villages. And in Peru, we go to a little Andes town, which has zero support from anyone aside from our tours. And we tell you in advance what you can bring. We do have a website, enrichinglivesinternational.com, that talks about all of our projects. And this is just this heart-wrenching story. When we went to this village, we came there and it was really treacherous how our bus driver got us there. You can see how cut off from everyone they are. And with our group, we actually shopped for them with our guide. He told us what they needed, and Tourcan Vacations donated money and gave to every one of our guests to buy stuff. And we brought it to them. And this is one of the markets. And these people were so poor and so excited to meet us that they served us boiled potatoes because that's all they had. They have no access to fresh water. And the food that we brought them, one group of 10 ladies, was enough to sustain them for 2 months. So talk about making yourself feel good. And it was all money that we donated. Tourcan matched everything that our guests brought. This is one of the colorful markets. Now we're back in Cusco. In Cusco, it's such a charming city. Chocolate and the different types of chocolate and how you make chocolate is something that we set a whole morning aside for our guests, so that you learn how chocolate is made, the different types of chocolates, and then you actually get to make your own. It's really an interactive experience. It's a lot of fun. And in order to make good chocolate, I'm told you have to kiss the baby, which is the chocolate you're preparing, and then it turns out well. So there's Chef Linda making her chocolate bunnies. And then we just, one of the things I want to talk about on the demographics of Peru, once you finish your tour in Cusco, you fly back at the end of your 10th day, your ninth night, 10th day, from Cusco into Lima, which is again a 45-minute flight from the high Andes back to sea level. And the flights depart from Lima to Canada at 2 in the morning, 1 to 2 in the morning, depending which airline you take. So what happens when your flight arrives into Lima at 5 p.m.? A lot of people are just hanging around until 2 a.m., which is crazy. What we do is we take you to a top site in Lima that a lot of people don't realize, and that is the magical water fountain show, which is the largest water fountain show in the world. It makes the Bellagio look like nothing. And we take you here for a show, and then the next slide, which is something to see. And you see like acres and acres of fountains dancing with laser and song and dance, and it's just amazing. And then after this feast of the eyes and senses and sounds, we take you to one of those beautiful seaside restaurants that Leila just talked to you about for a farewell dinner, facing the waves. And then you go back to the airport at midnight where you get your boarding pass and you're safe and sound for your flight home. And that would be this part. Now I'm going to pass you over to Leila now, who's going to tell you more about some of the great parts of Peru and adventures that are available to you.
So So far, we covered Lima experience through Cusco, through Sacred Valley to Machu Picchu, which, by the way, we actually need to pronounce it correctly, Machu Picchu, and back to Lima. But if
Yeah.
you're interested in staying longer in Peru and experiencing more, and this is what I did in the last tour that I took to Peru. We wanted to first of all go for the hike of the Machu Picchu. And in order to acclimatize our body, we did travel to Lake Titicaca for two reasons. One, because Lake Titicaca is such a unique place, and I have few slides that I wanted to show you what are the unique features of the Lake Titicaca and the neighborhood. And then secondly, because it's a higher altitude compared to Machu Picchu and Machu Picchu hike, I suggest to all of the people that I send to Peru and I help organize their tour to go to somewhere higher altitude than what they need to hike, so then they are prepared for that hike. Because part of that experience when you're hiking, actually at after the first day, there is no way coming back. So it's really hard until it's really an emergency situation and they transfer you back with a helicopter. Otherwise, it's really hard, and they don't even take you if you're not physically ready for the challenge. So high level, in this slide I wanted to talk to you about. So we in my last trip to Peru, we went from Lima to Lake Titicaca, and then after our body was acclimatized, we got to see the Lake Titicaca. We went to Cusco, and then we started the hike of Machu Picchu. So here are some beautiful slides about Puno and Juliaca, which are the main cities that you actually fly in from Lima to I guess Puno, right, Linda? I think you fly to Puno or Juliaca.
You
I
fly
forgot.
into Juliaca, which is
Juliaca.
pronounced like Juliaca, but Juliaca, which is close to the Bolivian border. It's
Yes.
very high. You're actually higher up than you are in Cusco, even. And from there, you drive into Puno on Lake Titicaca. Thank you, Leila.
And what you would actually, and we did wanted to experience that neighborhood for just to experience the culture. And the secondly, we wanted to see Lake Titicaca, which it's actually the largest navigational lake in the world. And if you look at those basically little islands, those are what's been built off of reeds. So they built off of that. And in this slide, I have a more view of how they actually build up. And they live on these islands that are floating. So they're called floating islands of Uros and on Lake Titicaca. And that's how these people have been living for years and years. Linda, do you want to add any other point about Lake Titicaca or?
Well, thank you. The only thing I wanted to say is how remote these people are and how they live. They come into Puno once a week to the market. And believe it or not, the market is still on the barter system. They don't even have money. You can bring stuff and trade it. They're living on these reeds in the middle of this deep, deep lake, and they keeping themselves alive from sinking is a constant challenge, and how these people survive and how you can visit them is definitely blows your mind.
And all these beautiful sceneries, and we had somewhere up in the hill, we went for a few hikes just to prepare our body and also get to see all these beautiful places. But what was astonishing to me was when you actually get out of the plane in in Juliaca is you feel that you can't even move your body. So it's literally, it's hard to believe, but even like taking one or two steps, two stairs, you feel that you can't do it. So you take like two steps until you have all of your medication and you're ready to for the high altitude. But it was really something that I personally didn't believe it in. The first time, the time that I wanted to do the hike, I thought, well, you know what, maybe they just talk about it, but it's not really that serious. But trust me, it is very serious, and you feel all of that pressure with all your body. So definitely, well, we're not going to take it to talk about the medication and all the other vaccination that you need to be taking for Amazon and other parts. But what's really important is the impact of high altitude, and you need to have all the medication to prep your body. So moving on from Lake Titicaca back to Cusco. So I don't want to get into. I'll skip the Cusco part because Linda thoroughly cover that part. And yes, there is going to be Q&A afterwards. Um, so this is the beginning of the Inca Trail. It's a 4-day hike. You start at kilometer 82 and you go all the way, which is, I guess, it was one of the things that it was a bucket list item for me. And this is a small group tour that I took last time I went to Peru. This is like one of the very highest hills when you're going through that experience. So just like hiking this, which is the second day, it's the toughest hike of the day because it's not really the hike, but part of it is the hike and the intensity and the consistency of that, plus the high altitude impact that it's a little bit pressure on your body. This is one of the views from one of the places, and we arrived later. And so, for those of you who are thinking about doing the hike of the Inca Trail, I've seen people that they were in their 60s and 70s. So it's not really a matter of age as long as you're healthy, and this is something that you do want to do. You could still do it, but obviously, you need to be really healthy and prepared for the hike. There are porters that they are taking all of your stuff for you, and you're paying for it. And they set up the tent. They bring all the food. They make all the food. So it's sort of like an all inclusive experience, but in a different way because you're doing hike and it's lots of activity involved. But it's one of the best foods that we've eaten during our time of Peru was something that we had during that time that we were doing the hike. And every single day when you wake up, they'll give you cocoa tea. And that's sort of like how it helps you with the whole altitude sickness. Um, these are some of the pictures of the last part of the hike. So on the last day, you wake up and there is you can see on the picture on the left that the hike is quite intense on the very last day. And before that, you need to get into the sun gate, which all the hikers, and that's actually on the picture on the left corner right hand side. So all the hikers get there to see the sun gate and to experience that. And when you get there, and that's the picture of me and my husband, you see all the clouds covering Machu Picchu, so you're not really seeing a thing. And so this is all the anticipation of all the hikers who've hiked 4 days for this moment. And then it disappears and you basically climb down. And this is the view of the Machu Picchu that you see. So this is the last small group tour that I took to Peru. I guess for me, it was one of the things that I can't describe because it was working hard for 4 days and finally getting there. It was quite an accomplishment. And obviously, it's like one of the best trips of my life. And this is how we celebrate it afterwards with pisco sour and have a nice meal. One thing I wanted to say is when you are in high altitude destinations or places, you're not your body cannot take alcohol much or even food that much. So we were not even drinking the past few nights before we start our hike because we just wanted to be as healthy as we could. So this was quite a celebration moment for all of us. So this is back in Aguas Caliente. So we did our hike. We came back to Aguas Caliente, which is a city in just downhill from the Machu Picchu, and then took the train back to Cusco. So one of the other things that it was important for us was to experience the Amazon. Um, so after Lake Titicaca, Cusco, and here, so this is the Machu Picchu. We went back to Cusco again, and here we are going on our travel to Amazon, which we went to Puerto Maldonado. Linda, I don't know if you want to add something, but that's one of the places that I would recommend people to go if they wanted to truly experience Amazon. I've got some pictures to show, but these part of Amazon is very safe, and it's off grid. So it will give you a totally different experience of not having power, not having cell phone, nothing. And you're just going back to the basics of living in a jungle and enjoy your life differently.
That's so true. And just to add, the Amazon is a mighty river, and the two main areas in Peru where you can see the Amazon would be Puerto Maldonado, where it's actually the Amazon basin, and then the other spot is Iquitos, which is where a lot of the cruise ships that cruise up the Amazon go. And further to Leila's point, being in Puerto Maldonado really gives you that feeling like, where would you ever think you're going to stay in five-star luxury with no cell phone and limited electrical times when they turn the power on so you can have a shower and maybe a ceiling fan? It's really something.
So this is some of our pictures. You may not realize how giant the the trees are in Amazon, but it's insane. And the other thing was we were staying in a lodge, and there are many of those lodges in Amazon that they feed you good food, healthy stuff, but the food is limited. So I do remember that sometimes we were asking for more stuff, and they were saying no because they just ran out of it, and that's how many people they made food. The sunsets at Amazon are beautiful, and we also did enjoy some of the night tours that they take you. They show you all the creatures at night, which sometimes I guess it may be a little bit not dangerous, but it may be a little bit of people may be scared to see those places. But this is like, imagine for those of you who've been to Vancouver several times and the Capilano Bridge, this is basically a Capilano Bridge built on the Amazon trees. And this is how giant those trees are. And those, how you can go from one part of the, some part of the jungle to the other part, but just going through these places. After our Amazon experience, I recommend, so part of the reason that I'm recommending these kind of layout, if you have 3 weeks and you wanted to see the main attractions that Peru has to offer. If you have obviously limited days, you need to pick and choose what you wanted to do. So some people, they do Lima, Machu Picchu, Sacred Valley, and Amazon. But if you wanted to see it all, that could probably be one of the best itineraries. So from Puerto Maldonado, Amazon, we flew back to Lima. And then here we're going to Paracas, Ica, and Nazca, which is by the Pacific Ocean. And they also have, so if you recall, we mentioned that Peru is a very diverse country. And part of the reason I'm going to show you some of the pictures and some of the experiences in this part of the region, and you realize that it's really different than the Amazon, the Lake Titicaca, the Sacred Valley, and Machu Picchu. And now we're going to experience a different part of Peru. So this is something that you see at Paracas National Park, by the South Pacific Ocean, which is so beautiful. So many amazing animals, and I've captured some of those in some of these pictures, so that you could see about what is it that is unique about those areas. Flamingos are flying all over. Linda, I forgot to mention, do you want to mention anything about Paracas?
Yes.
You're on mute.
What I wanted to mention is for any birders, Paracas is a very unique area. It's about 217 kilometers from Lima. So if you were coming with us on one of our tours, we would probably arrange a private transfer from Lima in a private car or a small bus down to Paracas. And it's close to the Ballastas Islands. And this is probably the highest concentration of birds in the world. So this many of you don't realize, even more than the Galapagos, which shocked me, is Peru for the birds, for those birders. So that's just what I wanted to mention. Thank you, Leila. Back to you.
Sounds good. I don't know how many of you heard about Nazca lines, but these are some of these shapes that you only need to fly to be able to see it from the high up. So we went to so there is actually an airport. You hop on a plane, and what you will see is something like these, which Linda, I don't know if you want to add more stuff, but so to date, they haven't fully figured out how they come about, or it's one of the mysteries of the world that they couldn't still figure out the story behind it.
Well, thank you, Leila. I think the thing that's so important is, first of all, if you're interested in the tour of the Nazca Lines, it's a 1 day or half-day excursion from Lima. It is expensive. It's going to cost you over 500 US dollars. And you would leave from Lima, go about an hour and a half, 2 hours along the South Shore. But what are these Nazca Lines? They are actually a series of enormous geoglyphs etched into a 200 square meter stretch of the desert, and they're created by the pre-Inca people. But the enormity of these figures, and each one of these figures we have actually taken in our plane ride, it would just blow you away. Now, for those who are light of heart, I don't recommend this tour. The planes fly very fast, and when they see one of these geoglyphs, they just dive in. So, they're small planes, but if you're subject to motion sickness or inclined that way, I would consider maybe, I wouldn't recommend this for you. But for those of you who want the adventure, the thrill, to me, it was something that just blew my mind. But you have to be very quick. You have to have a very good camera, and you have to grab these shots as you zoom over them. But how these were formed, or just have the most skilled scientists scratching their heads, because aside from the fact that aliens came to help them, none of the theories really make any sense. So it's really something to see them. So back to you, Leila.
I just wanted to also highlight some of the other experiences in Ica, which is quite interestingly another desert area, which people go. I always recommend sandboarding, and it's actually one of the best places for wine tasting and wine in Peru. That was quite shocking to me the first time I went to Peru. So that kind of like covers up that part of the region. And I also wanted to show you some of the pictures of those unique accommodations that I recommend my clients to stay in those areas, which is more like hacienda, boutique style, which some of them are family owned properties, that they are very much have all the culture and heritage aspect of Peru in them. And the probably the last two slides before we open up for Q&A, we do have a September tour to Peru, and it's the kind of like the main attraction of the Peru, from Lima, Cusco, Sacred Valley, and Machu Picchu, and those are higher up accommodations. So if you're interested, let Linda and I know.
And further to that too, we can customize this tour. This is a ladies only tour. I will escort this tour throughout, so you would have not only myself, if you might even have Layla coming with you as well, but you'll have a full-time guide that I pre-book a year in advance because he's that popular, and there'll be no more than 15 people max, and normally about 10 people on this tour. And from there, if there's any pieces that you want to customize, we can do that for you as well.
For sure. I just wanted to emphasize again, I wanted to emphasize again on some of those exclusive experiences. You are not going to do that on your own. So so even booking a hike for the Machu Picchu and the park, it's something that a lot of travel agencies need to get permit months and months in advance, or some of those unique experiences that we highlighted. So I do specialize on a lot of custom made tours and packages, and it doesn't matter the number of people, but this is another interesting tour if you wanted to go with women only tours. And obviously Linda always run amazing, beautiful tours to Peru. So those are some of the options that you have. But right now I wanted to open up for some Q&A. So okay, so let me see. Okay, so any questions? I think Vicky, you had some questions, no?
I have some questions. Is my microphone? I'm not sure if my microphone's working.
Hi, Laura. It does.
Hi. I just have some questions. What's the altitude of the Machu Picchu, and then the secondary hike that you were mentioning, the more challenging one?
I can answer that for you.
Thank you.
When you arrive into Cusco, you're up at 11,150 feet.
Okay.
Lake Titicaca in Puno, which Leila spoke about, is 12,510 feet. Okay. So as you do the Inca Trail from kilometer 84, as Leila mentioned, to the Sun Gate, Machu Picchu's altitude is only 7,972 feet. So you are actually descending as you do the hike. You are descending, but you're going through the mountains.
Okay.
There is one spot though that you have. I forgot. It's called I forgot what the name was, but that was the picture of us, which is like the highest altitude while you're hiking the Machu Picchu, which happens on the second day. I have to get back on exactly what the number is.
Oh, it's okay. What was the secondary hike though that you said was really challenging? What was that one that you said some people could do?
Oh.
No, I was saying that if you cannot do if you, because what happens is they all the tour operators and all the tour guides, they observe all the tour all the people, and then if they don't see them, then they're as fit or they're as well progressing, they don't let them to even get into day 2, so they send them back, and it happens quite a lot actually. And
right,
then
because of altitude issues.
Because of altitude,
Yes.
or some people are just not that prepared.
But there
And
was a hike that was it Linda that mentioned you've done it one time that you said.
Oh, that's Juana Picchu,
Yes,
and that's
so
a lower hike. But before I talk about Juana Picchu, the answer that to your question to Leila, the second day on the Inca Trail, you actually go through that dreaded pass, and you're up 13,828 feet. So you're going up and then descending because you're climbing the mountains. Now, Juana Picchu, you're not that high up altitude-wise as the Inca Trail hike, but it's a very steep, rocky climb, and you have to be. I mean, like I said, as long as you're fit. I mean, gyms are closed now, but for those of us who work out every day,
yeah,
we better be.
still working out from home.
Same, yeah, I know. So
Yeah.
I hope we've answered that. But that second day is a killer. For some people that want a piece of the Inca Trail, Leila can also help you with taking that same train, the Vista Rail, and then you get off at kilometer 104.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 6 to 8 hour hike in to the Sun Gate. And that gives you a taste of the Inca Trail without all the strain. So that's also an option.
Okay.
which is not actually that tough or difficult.
Yes.
So the last part is not as complicated or difficult as probably the 4-day would be.
Do a lot of people take the is it Diamax or do most
Yes.
people take that? Yeah.
I recommend it highly.
Yeah, just to start like at the beginning of the trip before you even hit altitude, you start taking that, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right,
I'm told that you have to take it actually 2 days before you do your hike.
Yes.
Got it?
It's
Okay.
you do.
Okay.
And I guess that's what happened in my tour, because the 2 people who were on my small group tour, they did not want to take the pills, and halfway through the second day, which is like the highest hike of the mountain, it's they needed some oxygen or some help in the second day. So it's something that I guess everyone should take.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you so much.
So Layla, I have a question. So if you wanted to do the full hike, the full excursion, what would be the best way to really prepare for that? I mean, I know working out, yes, but there's got to be other things. Like, how could you best prepare for it so that you're ready to take on the whole experience?
I would say just like if you're physically fit and prepared and you exercise, because the hike itself is not that intensive. But when you are, if you're hiking against, and your body is basically fighting against the high altitude, and what we did actually halfway through our hike, because our backpacks it was heavy, so I took half of it, and we just gave that to our porters. So we had to pay extra money, but that was something that I was willing to do in order to hike easier. So I think if you're physically fit, if you take the high altitude sickness pills 2 days, if you follow this whole thing that I always recommend to my clients, which is going to higher altitude of Hulyeco and Lake Titicaca before hiking up, it's really acclimatized your body. Because I don't believe the hike itself is that intensive.
Okay.
And further to that, what I did when I did the trail, the Inca Trail, that was over 20 years ago, but again, I'm only 25. I keep forgetting.
That's impressive. 5 years
I've been
old.
in the
Wow.
business for 40 years. But I remembered climbing up 25 flights of stairs. At the time, I lived in a condo, and I would just hike up the stairs, up and down. And I have an 82-year-old lady that was with me in Morocco. She's actually in Portugal. I'm praying that she's home safe. But she was going on a very strenuous hike, and she did that. She's 83 right now, so stair climbing. And when you're in Juliaca or in Puno, there's a 2-kilometer hike that you can do. that I would recommend too. It's part of a lot. If you stay at some of the hotels that Layla can hook you up with, it's part of their services to you, and that gives you starting to hike now in the altitude, and it's 2 kilometers up and down, and you'll be fine.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, there's no good way to prepare for altitude. It doesn't matter how fit you are unless
Yes.
you train at altitude, right? And we don't live near Colorado or anywhere, right? So it's
And
hard.
Laura, I work out every day, and I've been very hit by altitude all 3 times. So I really recommend the medication, which I take, because I was always saying, "Well, I'm not going to take
It
it."
doesn't matter how fit you are. It's
Yeah.
altitude. There's no way to train for it. The
Yeah.
stairs or doing hill hikes or something is a great way to train for fitness for something like this.
Yeah.
But you don't know how your body's going to. And then hydration, I've heard, is huge. Like you have to drink a ton of water.
Yeah.
And very little alcohol.
Yes.
Yeah.
So alcohol, food, and those are the kind of things that actually contribute to you have a better hike. And that's why we cut down our alcohol level. We were eating, is that less carb or more carb, Linda?
More carb.
It's more carb. Yeah. At
Yeah.
altitude, you're supposed to go high carb.
Yeah, lots of pastas and whole grains are good, and the coca leaves, and lots of water.
Yeah.
I have a Garmin ViaFit watch here. I got it for Peru. It actually monitors my oxygen when I sleep.
Oh, wow.
I think but what we have in all of the hotels, they check your altitude on your oxygen on your finger, and even when we pick you up in Lake Titicaca or in Cusco, the first thing we do in Lake Titicaca, because it's higher, we actually test your finger before you get on the bus. We give you water, and we give you a packet of coca leaves.
Mm-hmm.
It's like testing your temperature. It's
Yeah.
like testing your temperature for a coronavirus.
Ooh.
All right.
Great.
Ladies, any other questions?
I think that's it.
No, this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Very
very much.
informative.
Yeah, really good. Thank you.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
So there are going to be other virtual tours as well. I am planning to have Morocco, East Africa, and South Africa in the coming weeks. But if there is a particular part of, I got one of feedback from one of my friends that she couldn't be here about Japan. So if there is any destination that you would want to have all these, tips and tricks and what are the best way to explore it, let me know. And follow Travel Design by Layla on Instagram and on Facebook. I share tons of educational stuff on my social media.
Great. I've been looking at Annapurna and like the Himalayas. That's why I know been researching a bit about altitude. So like Everest and Annapurna. Have you done things there?
I haven't done, no, but I have someone who is interested to hike the Kilimanjaro next year.
Okay.
And we do a lot of independent tours there, and also Kili as well.
Yeah.
Different ranges.
Very cool.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have all of you virtually here with us. So thank you so much again. Have a great evening.
Thank you too.
Yes.
Thanks, Layla.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.